Way back in 2019, I completed a very complicated Mandarin exam. At least it was complicated for me, especially since it was in the evening and I was very tired and working very hard at the time. But I passed, and it created a mystery in my mind that I still haven't been able to solve, especially since even before I took that exam, my Chinese father-in-law told my wife that when I sing in Mandarin, it's almost indistinguishable from a native speaker, and yet that was part of the Chinese class that I didn't do very well with. Anyway, I was thinking about it this morning because my current memorization project is the Tao Te Ching, and like even then I don't know that I can quite do the tones because I can't even really hear it properly in my ear, my inner ear, but there's two English versions that I'm working with, but I'm memorizing it in Mandarin, and I want to start to focus more on solving the mystery of how that I can't really use Mandarin tones properly in conversation, yet somehow when I sing, it sounds really great to native speakers. And I think I have some answers about what to do and how to do it. And there are really just a lot of mysteries around pronunciation for me, especially since I've had a similar effect in the long Sanskrit mantras where people who know Sanskrit really well have said, wow, your pronunciation is really great. But if I isolate the words from the musicality of the mantras, then it's not pronounced quite right at all. So I want to share with you this paradox of being able to sing Mandarin songs that I've memorized and yet still struggle to pronounce the tones conversationally. And it's not like it embarrasses me. I think a lot of people actually struggle, and I think they, like myself, don't know why. And so in my case, I'll share some reasons why I think that it is happening and it's been a long time problem. And I don't even pronounce English correctly. I mean, I've had so many comments on how I pronounce nuclear in my video, Aristotle's nuclear alphabet, that I even asked a language specialist, and he said, oh no, people who are bothering you about your pronunciation of that word, he called it a shibboleth, which is probably right. In any case, there's lots of reasons why your pronunciation could be off. There's lots of reasons why that your pronunciation could be on. In my case, some of the problems have to do with that my hardware is fighting me, and your hardware might be fighting you too, and you're just not aware of it. So as a language learner, it's really important to not give yourself all kinds of mental barriers when it's actually a physical problem that you couldn't change if you wanted to. So in my case, when I was 3, I burst an eardrum. What happened is a swimming teacher told me that I was ready to dive from the medium height diving board, and he just pushed me off the board, and my head hit the water square on. It was this ear. And what followed was not a quick fix after that eardrum was blown out. I wound up having 8 surgeries on this ear between ages 3 and 10. 8 surgeries. Now, they put me to sleep just to take tubes in and out, but the last surgery involved grafting a patch onto the hole just to close it up. And I remember pulling a mile of gauze out of my head and freaking my mom out because I was supposed to wait and let a doctor do that. But in any case, I've had problems with my ears and hearing ever since, and I think the other ear decided to get worse in order to compensate, as if my damaged ear was lonely and needed another lame duck to keep it company. So anyhow, things get a little bit more interesting. I mean, I also play bass, I play guitar. I composed the entire soundtrack for my Memory Detective novel, the audiobook, Vitamin X. And yet, for reasons I don't fully understand, the musical ear does not translate cleanly to tonal languages, except for if I'm singing them. Ni wen wo ai ni yo duo shen. Anyway, I don't know whether it's correct or not, but that's what I've just heard. And I can hear a bass line and reproduce it in a reasonable amount of time. Not as fast as Rick Beato, far from that speed, but I can still pick up music and play it. And sometimes my wife shows me some song and I grab the bass and I can play it very, very quickly. But if you ask me to hear the difference between the second tone and the third tone in Mandarin, like rising versus dropping, then rising, something in my processing just fumbles. Anyway, while we're having our little pity party here, on top of my ear situation, I've had extensive dental work. There was a bike accident years ago when I was 11, I think, that cost me several teeth. And now I have an implant as an adult because one of those teeth had multiple root canals and ultimately had to go. And so this is not the mouth I was born with. And when you're trying to shape tones, which involve tongue position, airflow, resonance, the physical architecture, matters more than people realize. And even when I learned German, which is my best and strongest language, I went to a phonology course, and they did all kinds of things in that course, and still to this day, I can't quite make the sound Quittung in a way that native German speakers accept. I mean, some people get what I'm saying, but I often have to just use the word Rechnung instead because Quittung just does not come out in a way that makes sense. Anyway, I'm not asking for sympathy here. I'm just telling you this because, as I said, many people struggle with tones. They struggle with pronunciation. They feel like their ear just doesn't cooperate with their mouth the way other people's ears and mouths seem to coordinate. And I just don't think you're broken. And you might just want to do some analysis too, like what might have gone on with you that has changed the shape of your ears or your mouth or whatever. And then in terms of the memory techniques, you might just need a different system than everyone else is learning. And that's what this video is about. I'm going to show you the system that I'm using right now in real time to finally, I hope, get better at the tones. Maybe I'll even crack it. And it's a technique that I've used for a while, but I'm just starting to use it again because I picked up this Tao Te Ching program for myself again. And this particular memory system is called a 00 to 99 PAO. And if you haven't heard of it before, it's a means of using a specific mnemonic tone and applying it to tonal languages. And it goes back to a tradition that's older than any university. It's probably older than any book. But let me first share with you something about why that using memory techniques, whether it's the 00 to 99 PAO or memory palaces or whatever, they're never going to work entirely for language learning. And if you watched my channel before, you know that I'm a memory palace evangelist. I use them for everything, for vocabulary, for scripture, for names, historical dates, philosophical arguments. And the memory palace is my primary tool, as are alphabetical associations to figure out pronunciation, whatever the language is. But tones are just such a different animal. And when you memorize a word like shan, which is mountain, that's the first tone, you can to a certain extent just place a mnemonic image in a memory palace and you're done. I mean, I know a person named Shannon, and in Beijing, where I stayed for a long time, there was a mountain landscape, and I just imagined Shannon on that mountain. And then at that time, I was using a kangaroo jumping up, I think, or punching up, a kangaroo with boxing gloves, punching up to remember that it was the first tone. And it was quite an awkward system. So punching up kangaroo for the first tone, punching forward kangaroo for the second tone, then the kangaroo would jump down and break the concrete for the third tone, and then it would punch the ground for the fourth tone. Anyway, it would help the sound and the meaning stick, but it just wasn't good enough, especially since a lot of Mandarin words come in pairs, so you can't just always go around with kangaroos. It's going to blur, right? And then you're not going to recognize anything. So you've got like 4 tones or maybe 5 tones or 6 tones, depending on which sinologist that you're talking about or which internet troll and forum dweller that, you know, wants to get into all the granular weeds of all that. And that's important stuff for sure. But the point is that you've got a lot of words where you have to have 2 syllables, and so it'll be tone 1-1 or 1-2 or 2-1 or 3-4 or 4-3, etc. And I'll get into some specific examples here. But you need those tones to be correct to make sense to native speakers. And then on top of that, you have tone changes, which is called sandhi. And I've dealt with sandhi in Sanskrit as well, but I don't speak Sanskrit with anybody, so it's not been that big of a deal. But in Mandarin, it can be. So basically, the long and short of it is that Pitch, I just haven't totally cracked it in a streamlined way, but I'm getting closer, and I'm going to share that with you today. It takes a bit of extra effort, but when you put in that effort, that's where things get really exciting, because this system 00 to 99 PAO, it doesn't just solve tones. It gives you a mental infrastructure you can use for numbers, for dates, for playing cards, for the names of people, and a dozen other things. And it's just amazing what it can do for you. So there's a Sanskrit verse that is, let's see if I can remember here. Turtva, probably more like Turtva, Moharnavam, Hatva, Ragadveshtirakshashan, Yoga, Shantasanta Yuktatma, Ramo Varajate. I think I bungled a little bit there, but that's verse 50 of the Atmabodha, and it's one of the foundational texts that I've worked on memorizing for contemplative meditation, and now I'm adding in Tao Te Ching, and that Atmabodha verse is my 5th long-form Sanskrit mantra that I've worked on. And that basic phrase that I just said in Sanskrit, it says something that I think everybody watching this needs to hear. That 50th verse of the Atmabodha describes something you must really consider to do. And it says that you have to conquer or kill the monster of likes and dislikes, the raga and the dvesha, to arrive in what that verse calls the ocean of tranquility. Because that ocean, well, spiritually, I haven't yet cultivated all the virtues so that I can reside permanently in tranquility. But having accomplished a lot in language learning over the years, there is tranquility when you feel like you're making real traction with your language learning. So if you're serious about building a better memory, whether it's for languages, for your career, for your life, smash that subscribe button if you're new here. And for the love of memory, hit the thumbs up so the robots never forget that we humans still love our minds and the power of memory. And I will continue to share with you, I'll be enabled to share with you what I actually do and how I really do it, because the techniques that I share on this channel and the Magnetic Memory Method podcast, it's a mission, and the core idea is simple. When you get better at learning, everything gets better. And the more you learn, the more you can learn. It's not a slogan. It's a neurological fact. And if you want to experience it, then please be part of this mission, and thank you for supporting it. Now, before I show you the PAO system for memorizing tones that reduces so much of the nightmare, and maybe even may end the nightmare of memorizing tones, I want to tell you just a little bit of why I'm memorizing the Tao Te Ching. Sorry, let me say that better. Try better here. Tao Te Ching. It's so hard sometimes, right? 4, 2, 1. Anyway, at this particular moment, I really want to work on it because I first memorized the opening lines of the Tao Te Ching years ago. And I got the characters down of the first opening, and I got the meanings, but the tones, like it's Tao Ke, Tao, Fei Chang Tao. Ming, Ke, Ming, Fei Chang Ming. And I remember it, but sitting here memorizing this in English and Mandarin is not just a language exercise. I need the philosophy because I'm going through a period where things are really difficult. And I won't get into all the details, but the Tao Te Ching, I mean, it's so difficult to do the second tone for me in particular, this duh, and I have to think about how to position my mouth to do it. But anyway, the text of it has the quality of where even the act of memorizing it forces you to slow down and sit with the ideas at the same time that you got to slow down and sit with the challenge of the tones. And this is generally helpful and genuinely helpful when life gets heavy. Anyway, the value of the difficulty is the uncarved block. It is the empty vessel that needs to be filled with the form that stretches you out so that you actually can be like what you're trying to achieve. The valley that receives everything and can receive everything because it's willing to bend low and be humble. So I'm in the valley right now with the Mandarin tones, and I'm okay with that because I've got this system that's going to help me work with it. So what is this system? Okay, so the PAO system, person, action, object. This is going to take a few minutes to explain, but stick with me, because once you have this, you're going to have a tool that will serve you for the rest of your life, and not just in language learning, in many, many things. The PAO is built on top of something called the major system. At least that's the way that I do it. And there's choices and options that you can pursue, but a lot of people in the magnetic memory method community, they tell me, man, I wish I would have just started with the major as you've recommended, because the other options, they have too many arbitrary elements. The major really locks things down to the most logical component, as far as I'm aware of. Anyway, it's a way of converting numbers into consonant sounds. So it works like this, and I'll rattle it off pretty quickly, but there'll be an image on the screen that you can make a screenshot from if you like. 0 is a soft C, S, or Z. 1 is a T or D. 2 is an N. 3 is an M. 4 is an R. 5 is an L. 6 is a sh, j, j, sh sound. 7 is a K sound. Some people use a hard G. 8 is an F or V. 9 is a B or P. To take just a random example from the 00 to 99 PAO, one of my favorites is number 21. You take the consonant sounds. So 2 is an N, 1 is a D or T, and you form a word. Now, when I did this years and years ago, I just chose a very common word that many people use for 21, which is nut, N and T. But then you want to go a bit further and turn that word into a very, very vivid person, if you can. So for me, 21 is Jack Nicholson. Why? Because he often played characters who are completely nuts, especially in The Shining. I think his name was Jack Torrance, if memory serves. So every 2-digit pair from 00 to 99 gets a person, an action, and an object. And that's what PAO is, person, action, object. So 21 is Jack Nicholson. He's the person because he's nuts. The action is him knocking on that door in The Shining, although he's got an axe, right? Wendy! And it's like a very, very vibrant image, except for the idea is that the axe is built from nuts, or it's a nut-shaped axe in my imagination. So now 21 is always that. So when there's tone 2 and tone 1, Jack Nicholson with his nutty, crazy nut-shaped axe is going to be involved in there. Let me give you another example that shows you this principle with 43 that also involves The Shining, but from a different language. So in Latin, I memorized this beautiful phrase, omnium expetendorum prima esse sapientia in qua perfecti boni forma consistit. And this means choose wisdom above all things, because in the choice of wisdom is the form of goodness itself. So I'm often very tired, and I still want to memorize anyway, and for some reason, this expetendorum word was evading me like crazy. So I looked at each and every syllable, and without getting into the detail of every single syllable, one of those syllables is rum, right? And so in the 00 to 99 PAO, R is 4, 3 is M, and it happens to be in that same movie with Jack Nicholson called The Shining. You have Danny Torrance, the little boy, who says, red rum, red rum, red rum. Now, sometimes I might use Jack Sparrow from the Pirates of the Caribbean, swinging around with a rum bottle. But at the end of the day, with expetendorum, I put red rum. And that's because there's that word door. And if you've ever seen The Shining, well, first of all, Jack Nicholson tries to axe through the door, or he does axe through a door. And then the little boy, Danny Torrance, who has Tony in his finger, at some point in that movie, if memory serves, red rum appears in blood paint on the door, right? So, expetendorum. Now, that solution is coming from the 00 to 99 PAO by looking at those consonants. And in that case, it solved everything, because I was just like, oh, what am I going to do for this? And I wasn't finding it in the normal alphabetical approach that I use. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds like a lot of front loading and a lot of activity that you have to do later on. I have to memorize 100 people with actions and objects before I can even start this? No, I do recommend that you do have a 00 to 99 PAO, but all you need really is the 1122, 21, 2332, 4341, like all those combinations if you're going to use the 4-tone system. If it's a 6-tone system, it's still 61, 62, 63, 64, 51, 52, 53, 54, etc., right? Now there's every reason why you should have the full 00 to 99 PAO, but I'm not going to pretend that there isn't setup here. building your 00 to 99 PAO takes effort. It could take a few days if you're focused. It could take a few weeks if you're taking it slow. I know students who have done it in under an hour. I know other students who have refined it over months. I know a guy named Kevin Richardson. You can listen to this episode still on the Magnetic Memory Method podcast. He basically left this and dragged his feet for, I think, 2 years it was. But then when he finally got into it, his Japanese soared. And he shared very interesting images of his memory palaces, and that's a very deep, insightful podcast if you want to listen to it. And there's another episode with Sunil Khatri, his name was, and you can listen to that for Japanese. Really interesting stuff. So at the end of the day, there are people who have taken the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass and they have succeeded as well. It's not just me that gets into the weeds of these techniques. They're very, very helpful, especially if you're dealing with any of the Asian languages. Now, it's not for everyone. If you love rote repetition, you love your flashcards, and you love grinding or whatever, if it works for you and you genuinely are getting the results that you want, then you might not need to do this. I don't love rote learning. I find it tedious. And for someone with my particular set of challenges with the ear, the mouth, the general stubbornness about wanting to know memory techniques deeply and use them well and make the process as elegant and fun as possible, the PAO gives me something that rote never can. It's a way to encode information that my brain actually wants to hold on to and has fun with. And here's an insight that changed everything for me. I learned from the memory athlete Florian Delay that you can actually compress each PAO assignment so that the person is the action and the object simultaneously. Now, if your brain is already fried, if I go into the weeds of what that means, it might fry it some more. But you know what? This is the Magnetic Memory Method show here, so let's get into it. My number 36 used to be just a box of matches. But after I heard this from Florian, and then based on the major system, I took M and J for match, and I basically kept it. But after a while, I realized actually 36 could be Mike Tyson in a boxing match. And then Tyson is now someone who can box the action. And the gloves can be a kind of object here, but basically just Mike Tyson contains all the layers because he's involved in boxing matches, and then he'll take these matches and flick them, which is utterly absurd because when you're wearing boxing gloves and you're flicking matches, I mean, this is almost impossible. And it makes the association memorable, but it also maintains and honors the original setup. But it's just a thing where because matches set things on fire, or they can make a little plink, plink, plink sound when they hit the next person, now the compression into the singular image, it can also act in a way that goes along the row of all the numbers that you need to remember. So when I need to combine the tones, like, let me see if I can close my eyes here and remember this. It's Wu Ming, Tian Di, Zhi Shi, something like that. Now, I'm not recalling the tones here right now. I'm just trying to remember the actual words. But it should be 22, 40, 14, and then 13. So the Wu Ming has to be more like Wu Ming. And then it has to be first tone and fourth tone, and then Tian Di has to be first tone and fourth tone, and then Zhi Shi has to be first tone and third tone. And because I can remember that, now I can work on it. I'm not going to work on it right now because it's gotten quite late here and I'm pretty tired, but at the end of the day, it's going to help me remember that Wu Ming has to be 2 and 2, so I can work on how I'm going to work out how to make it sound like I'm asking a question so the tone rises. Wu Ming. Wu Ming. And then Tian Di is going to be, is it 14? Yeah, so Tian Di. And then Zhi Shi, I think that's getting closer. Anyway, the problem is not exactly solved in the most clean way possible, but it's the way that I actually have fun using. And so basically what you can do is just set up your system if you want to learn a 00 to 99 PAO. And then when you have the third tone followed by the first tone, well, I would have Mad Max for that, because M is 3 and 1 is a T or D. Sometimes I use the Mad Magazine mascot dressed as a maid, stuff of this nature, right? 4 and 2, well, that would be the word ran, because 4 is R and N is 2. And so then I think of the Kurosawa film, Ran. And probably I could work on the pronunciation for that too. But in any case, since every two-digit number already has an image in my PAO system, whenever I encounter a two-syllable word or a phrase of two-syllable words in Mandarin, I already know what I'm going to be able to do once that I have the basic sound and meaning in place in order to get the tonal information also encoded in my long-term memory. And then I can work on it with my voice. And this means that I don't have to hear the tones perfectly in my head. I can reconstruct them logically from the magnetic association, because the magnetic association gives you the number of what the tones should be. And with enough practice, I think the tones will start to become automatic, and the images will fade in the background, and the pronunciation should take over. So, at the risk of repetition, this is not one smooth operation. It's layered. I don't try to memorize sound and meaning and character and tone all at once. That would probably overwhelm anyone, especially someone whose ear and mouth is working against you, right? If you have such problems. Instead, I know that the advice of many language learning gurus is sound and checks out in certain scientific studies and all that sort of stuff. But the neurodiverse, I guess, if that's something meaningful that I can call for myself, I mean, I just benefit from this technique. So again, is any of this foolproof? Absolutely not. And I still get things wrong. I have days where all of this blurs together and I feel like I'm back at square one. But here's what the Tao Te Ching teaches exactly about this situation that's so important. And I think the tones are 4 and 4 for, 2 and 2 for wu wei, wu wei. Effortless action, not forcing, not grinding, flowing with the difficulty rather than smashing against it. And that's what the 00 to 99 PAO helps me do. Instead of brute forcing my way through tone memorization with a broken ear, I'm using a system that gives me a workaround, a path through. Not perfect, but functional. And functional, compounded over time, eventually gets to something closer to fluency. I don't believe full fluency is ever coming. I don't even feel fluent in English. But what I've learned from memorizing a lot of Sanskrit and now working more intensely with the Tao Te Ching is that each of us learns much faster when we just dive in and explore, but explore long enough to actually use the techniques without quitting too early, without quitting during the setup phase, without expecting immediate instant results and constantly saying, well, that's too much front loading and that doesn't work for me. And then, going back to flashcards, which never really worked anyway, all that well, unless they do work for you. And, there's ways that I use flashcards that I've talked about before. Or some people, they go back to doing nothing at all. And maybe they even blame the entire world instead of taking personal responsibility. Believe me, I've been that guy, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. It's still maybe a little bit embarrassing that I've been through periods in my life where I failed to take responsibility for my own results. But hey, 13th verse of the Tao Te Ching reminds us, accept disgrace willingly. But there's another verse, and I haven't memorized the number of what that verse is, but it says, when the serious student of the Tao learns of the Tao, he practices it assiduously. And when the mediocre student of the Tao hears of the Tao, he's on again sometimes, off again other times. And when the poor student of the Tao hears of the Tao, he just laughs and laughs and laughs. And if he did not laugh, it would not be the Tao. So those of us, well, we are all like that some of the time. But those of us who get to the part of being assiduously, we just practice it assiduously and we let go of the expectations and the outcomes and we just practice on the practice. So here's what I suggest that you do. Accept that in the world of memory techniques, The front loading is a huge part of the technique. The setup is where your technical prowess gets built. And I think about this a lot, that a particular aspect of language learning that's hard for me is always probably going to be a mystery. I don't fully understand my own barriers. Maybe the eardrum damage plays a smaller role than I think. Maybe the dental work matters more than I know, or less or more. I don't know. Maybe there's something entirely else going on. But we can still learn even when we don't understand our barriers and our hangups. You don't have to solve the mystery before you start the journey. Action is the key. That's what Tao Te Ching is all about. Or, as I sometimes like to tell my students who are stuck in overthinking, action reveals what stasis conceals. By moving, you're going to reveal things. But by sitting still and doing nothing, things risk getting more and more rigid and paralyzed. Anyway, the Tao Te Ching, or however, I still got to work on it to get it proper. However it's said, it also has this message of, rather than waiting for certainty, accept that the condition is what the condition is. And every time I sit down with these characters and I layer on the tones and I get some of them wrong and I try again, I understand that teaching just a bit better. So if this video made you think a little bit differently about how you approach language learning, or tonal languages in particular, or any kind of difficult learning, I've put together something special for you. It's called How to Rapidly Memorize Words and Phrases in Any Language with Zero Experience. It's a free video course with 3 exclusive video tutorials that will help you remember vocabulary and phrases faster than you probably do right now. And the techniques, you can start using them the same day you watch the lessons. And the beauty is when you sign up for it, you're going to get notified of my upcoming boot camps. And one of them has a memory wheel related to language learning, and that's the Memory Wheel Boot Camp. And I'm going to go deeper into the historical memory techniques behind what I showed you today and show you an early version of the 00 to 99 PAO on memory wheels so that you can get a little bit faster with using memory wheels by adapting an approach that I'm not going to share anywhere else, and I haven't shared before, and it is, well, I have shared it before, but just inside of my live boot camps. This special learning wheel for tonal languages, I know you're going to love it. So grab that. The link is in the description, or it's on the screen, or by visiting magneticmemorymethod.com/LOM for the language of memory. And I'll also be doing one of my language of memory boot camps as well, where you actually take action as we talk more about how memory techniques work. So grab that free course, get on the notification list, and let's keep building. If you prefer to stick around on YouTube instead, or you want to come back to YouTube and you find the memory wheel concept intriguing and want to learn more already, my rundown of where it first emerged for memory and for critical thinking is one of the most popular videos on this channel, and you can click on the screen to watch it next. As Danny D. Ortiz always says, it's your life. And as I always like to say, thanks so much for joining me. And until we have a chance to speak again, keep yourself magnetic.